So, can you paint tanks with contrast paints? In short, yes, but different strategies are needed. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if your tank's a slightly different tone or colour scheme to your troops. What's important is it's consistent within itself. So if you look at like most modern military vehicles, even like World War II ones, the actual armour of the vehicles isn't the same colour scheme as the fatigues or the camo of the troops. So it doesn't really matter if they don't entirely match. So what we're going to do is use the colour scheme of a contrasted painted miniature we've already done, which is this Botan lady down here, and show you how easy it is to transfer that to a tank. To help tie this vehicle in with my Votan, I'm going to use the same undercoat spray, which is Sunset Yellow from Colourforge. This will vary depending on your own schemes, but it does speed up the painting process. With this particular spray, if I try to get a full coverage in one go, it will clog up the detail. So I'll give the Mini a quick dusting over, allow it to dry, and then do a second dusting over. That way you should avoid losing any detail. And you might notice with the upcoming stages, any exposed grey plastic, because you will get it here and there, we could just easily deal with that later on. To speed up picking out any working parts or metallics, I'm going to get my gunmetal paint of choice. Here I'm using Iron Hand Steel. I'm going to heavily dry brush the undercarriage and any other sections I want to look either metallic or so worn that the yellow paint hardly registers. Don't worry if you get any silver on your panels, we can tidy that later. So why yellow spray and not silver, I hear you ask? Well, just from experience of doing this over the years, I've just found this way is actually a lot quicker. If I was to do the other way around and spray it silver, it would take me many coats to try and build that yellow up, whereas I can just thin down a bit of silver, work in those cracks, wipe it off any panels with my finger, and then tidy it with one coat, one super thin coat. However, if you've got dark tones on your tank, so like blacks or reds, I mean, yeah, silver's probably the better option. But for yellow, white, I think spraying them white or yellow is better. Now, to hide a multitude of sins, I'm going to coat over these metallic sections with Nuln Oil. Chances are you might get some of this onto the yellow chassis. Don't worry, you can do two things: let it dry and tie it with Avalanche Sunset later on, like I just mentioned, or get a large brush, work it into the chassis, or just use it to help remove any of that dark tone from those yellow panels. Using Basilicanum Grey straight from the pot will apply this to any weapon casing, just for a slightly darker metallic finish, like we did with the Votan troops. You could also add this to some of the sections of the other metalwork for a variety in tone, and also to hide any yellow that may still be visible in those deeper recesses. At the end of the day, it's going to be dirty and grimy around those areas anyway, so just grime it up. With that wash now thoroughly dry, what we're now going to do is get some Iron Hand Steel and dry brush over all those metallic areas. Any black details such as the tyres will get a decent coat of Black Legion. Again, if you get this on the yellow, I don't think you will because the tyres are miles away. We can worry about that later. I'm also going to completely coat the interior of the cockpit with this colour in preparation for later. Tied up any black splodges on any silver bits as well if you did get any on your silver areas. In my eagerness to get this tank built, what I should have done was not glued the tyres to the actual chassis because I could have just sprayed them black. That is the easier route, so if you're watching this, learn from my mistakes. Just spray them separately and then attach them because they actually got quite a snug fit, so yeah, it'll be easier. Don't do what I did and then forget and glue them on because you got really excited building a tank. Before we highlight the armour, I'm just going to thin down some Avalanche Sunset and tidy up some of those yellow areas. Again, this is a super thin coat. One coat is going to be enough, but in some places, if you just want to add a second one, it's fine. Again, you're not spending ages and ages building up that yellow. Now we should roughly highlight up the yellow bodywork of this vehicle. I'm using Screaming Skull, as that was the highlight I used for my Votan, and I'm just going to dry brush that. Now we're going to help tie in the vehicle with our yellow Votan scheme. We're going to use Iyanden Yellow like we did for the Warrior. The easiest way to do this is just to apply the contrast into the recesses. Though your yellow vehicles will have a different finish, that's fine, as most of the vehicles are made different from the materials to the armour and possibly painted using a different colour anyway. This is quicker, but the colour can look quite pale and less interesting. Alternatively, you could heavily thin down the contrast and apply it all over, constantly being watchful for any areas pooling, and if it does, well, dead easy, you can either turn that into weathering later. The only downside to this method is it will pool a little more, which, as I said, can be corrected by repainting that section or just chipping over it. Using Magmadroth Flame straight from the pot, I'm going to pick out a few stripes on the bodywork. Or you could just use it to pick out a few armour panels if you're not confident enough to do that. Using Avalanche Sunset, we're just going to apply a few scratches to the orange. This will give the effect that the paint has been worn, scratched away, revealing the yellow colour underneath. Now using Garaghaks Sewer, we shall apply some scratches to the armour. Adding these into those yellow scratches we did will add a little bit of depth as well. You can also try this with a sponge and it looks great on vehicles. Or you can even combine both methods if you wish, and that will just look just as sexy. Using Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White, we shall pick out some of our lamps and lights. Then we shall apply some Frostheart over the white to give a nice blue glow, tying the vehicle in with the trims again. We're now going to move on to the cockpit. Now you could spend ages painstakingly painting the crew on the inside, and they deserve that. They do, because they're beautifully sculpted miniatures. But if you're on the clock, or you just want a really simple like OSL effect, we're just going to show you how to do that. We've already prepped it with Black Legion, and as Pat did observe as well, once the canopy's on, and you spent ages painting that crew member, you don't see any of it because it's hidden by like all the framework of the canopy. So yeah, do a quick way. That's what I'd recommend. Follow this way, super quick, and you're not wasting all that effort. To begin our simple cockpit interior OSL, I'm going to heavily dry brush with black green from Pro Acryl. You could use any dark green, Caliban green or whatever, but I'm using this one because it's cool. Now try to avoid getting too close to the yellow bodywork, or use a smaller dry brush if you need to. Next is to dry brush with Pro Acryl Green, so that's just like a mid-tone bright green, like an emerald green. To add some more brightness to that glow effect, we're now going to be dry brushing with a lighter green, which is Pro Acryl Yellow Green. Again, you just need a bright one like mood green or something like that. And for some extra punch here and there, just add a few extra highlights with a small brush like so, to just pick out that console, some facial details. So after I'd done the cockpit, I realised the actual like servitor guy on the back, I thought was like an open canopy, but it actually has a full canopy going over it. So I decided to paint that all black and then also dry brush that over as well, because I didn't pay attention to the instructions. Here I'm going to use Black Legion for the frame on the canopy. More often than not, the clear plastic canopies can be quite stubborn and you really need to build up the layers. Top tip, thin your Black Legion down a little, apply it all over, then wipe it off with some paper towel or a sponge. This weirdly will give the next coat something to stick to. As you can see here, it's going on nice and smoothly. If you don't do it, it might just pull away and it looks a bit oily and just spreads and you have to keep working it and working at it. Another way of looking at this is a bit like when you spray metallics and then you wash it straight over, it can spread away. It's a very similar effect to that, so sometimes you have to keep working at it. Now we want to attach the canopies to the model. For this we'll be using PVA. It will take longer to dry. If you use super glue, it will frost on the inside, and unfortunately plastic glue just ain't going to cut it. So even though I'm attaching this here and wiping with my finger, it will dry clear, so don't worry about that. And it will dry matte as well. We're now going to move on to applying our decal. Now first of all, what we need to do is neatly cut that out using a nice sharp knife. So get the desired image you want, or the decal that you need for your chosen league. And then what I'll do is apply it to some tissue paper and then just damp that tissue paper down and then leave it for 30 seconds. That should help it lift off the backing paper. Before placing the decal, apply some gloss varnish. Here I'm using Undercoat and applying to the section I want that decal to be placed. It also makes it easier to reposition the decal when you apply it to the surface if you need to. I recommend painting the entire section, as the varnish will slightly change the colour of that area. This is less noticeable as a section, far more noticeable if you just painted it where you want the decal to be. So if you did like a little circle and then placed it on there, it'll be very noticeable. More so on darker schemes than light ones. Now place the decal to the desired spot. Once you're happy, dab it down with a bit of tissue. If it looks a bit skew with or you're not happy with it, just add some more water, reposition it, and then once that's done, seal it with hard coat. And now coat that section in matte varnish to remove any glossiness. And just a reminder, this is over the entire section, not just the decal. And to finish our tank off, what we're now going to do is just dirty it up or weather it with some Steel Legion drab. Firstly, I'm just going to dry brush that around the tyres, the undercarriage, some of those little panels as well, and you can see it's just making that decal look a bit dirty. Also, it's worth pointing out, if I was to do this, I wanted to show you how to apply decal, I'd probably do the chipping after I've applied the decal as well. But it's up to you how you want to do it, or just add a couple of chips here and there to tie it in. But once that's done, then get some of that Steel Legion drab, thin it down, and then just run it into some of the tie bits and wipe it with your finger if you need to. So the question is, can you paint tanks with contrast? Yeah, of course you can. Well, you're watching. We just did it. Dead easy. Now, if you want to know how to paint those warriors, check out this video here. That will show you how to do it. It's also a nice yellow scheme, or in some people would say orange, so watch that. Put in the comments if you think it's yellow-orange. Don't forget to use our affiliate links to the bottom, and also we have a Patreon. You could be one of these cool people here too. Well, they're all cool. You could be one of them. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Love you.